dive into the top stories of the day. 3 Houston area members of Congress are asking why the National Weather Service's office in our region has nearly a dozen vacancies just ahead of hurricane season. I'm Ernie Manous.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. A new poll gauges how Texans are feeling about the economy, President Trump, and water. We'll discuss with the director of the Texas Politics Project.
Also for National Nurses Week, from Memorial Hermann, the Chief Nursing Officer and the Vice President of Security Services joins us to discuss the rise in violence against nurses.
And as Ernie and I discuss the top headlines of the day, we want your thoughts, your questions, and your concerns. Give us a call or shoot us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump's touting a breakthrough on trade with the UK. He says the final details of an agreement will be drafted in the coming weeks. Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer joined Trump by speakerphone as Trump announced the deal would give U.S. companies better market access for beef, ethanol, machinery, industrial products, among others. Meanwhile, Trump predicts a tariffs deal is coming between the U.S. and China, the world's 2 biggest economies.
Right now, you can't get any higher. It's at 145, so we know it's coming down. I think we're going to have a very good relationship. You know, I always got along very well with President Xi.
So far, China's been resisting Trump's pressure. The U.S. and China are preparing for high-level talks in Switzerland this weekend. There have been fresh attacks today between nuclear-armed rivals Pakistan and India. Pakistan's army spokesman says his country shot down a dozen Indian military drones that had killed a civilian and injured 4 Pakistani soldiers. NPR's Omkar Karndeka reports this comes after India's most significant missile attacks on Pakistan in more than 50 years.
Spokesperson Ahmad Sharif says the drones were hovering over major cities, including Rawalpindi, the location of the Pakistani Army headquarters.
This is a serious provocation.
The latest accusations come after India struck multiple targets across Pakistan on Tuesday in what it says is retaliation for a militant attack in late April, where gunmen killed 26 people. Pakistan denies any connection to that attack and says it will defend itself. Omkar Khandekar, NPR News, Mumbai.
At the Vatican, a 2/3 majority vote remains elusive. No one candidate has yet secured enough backing from cardinals to succeed the late Pope Francis. Evident twice this morning when the chimney of the Sistine Chapel billowed more black smoke. And so voting continues. NPR's Sarah Ventry is in St. Peter's Square.
We are now in the afternoon of the second day of the conclave, where 133 cardinal electors will decide who among them is the next pope. In the meantime, there are thousands of people milling around St. Peter's Square, all anxiously awaiting smoke. And there is just kind of a mood of excitement and a little bit of electricity in the crowd. Whether people are religious or not, whether they're Catholic or not, everyone I've spoken to is excited to be here for this historical moment.
That's NPR's Sarah Ventry reporting. Cardinals, 133 of them are sequestered from the outside world. They're trying to find a candidate who can lead the 2,000-year-old church in an era when many, especially young people, are questioning the Vatican's credibility. U.S. stocks are trading higher this hour. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 551 points, or 1.3%. This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. Investigators are looking into what led up to a shooting early this morning in the North Shore area. An off-duty San Jacinto County officer shot and killed a teenager and injured another after they allegedly tried to gain entry into his home. Ben Katrib is a major with the Harris County Sheriff's Office. He described what happened moments before.
Deputies learned that a group of individuals, some in their teens, were involved in some sort of altercation that ultimately led to shots being fired. After the shooting, several males ran on foot. One of them attempted to gain entry into a nearby home. That homeowner discharged his firearm, striking that suspect.
Katrib says all people of interest have been detained for questioning, and there is no outside threat to the community. And Houston City Council voted Wednesday to kick off a process that could lead to changes to its minority-owned business program. The city was considering removing Asian and Hispanic-owned businesses from the program, but it walked back those changes after backlash. As News 88.7's Dominic Anthony Walsh reports, the move comes as the city faces a lawsuit over the program.
The proposed removal of Asian and Hispanic-owned businesses was prompted by a study that found they do not face disparities in certain categories of city spending.
We believe that there were some flaws and some issues with the disparity study.
Daniel Yu is with the local Asian Chamber of Commerce. He supports City Council's vote because, while it accepted the results of the study, it walked back immediate changes to the program.
We're not here to divide the community, but we are here to build a community. And again, our focus is to build a stronger, fairer, more equitable Houston.
The study, adopted in a 12-3 vote, will be used in court in an effort to justify the program. I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh, News 88.7.
It's 77 degrees on the UH campus. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
I just said to Celeste, I'm not ready to start the show. And Celeste's like, well, that doesn't matter because the show is starting when it's starting.
Well, I didn't even realize today was Thursday.
I know you asked, somebody said, for Friday, and you're like, what's today?
What is today? I mean, this week has flown by.
It's been a crazy, you know why? Because Frank isn't in studio with us again today, and it throws us off, I think.
It does.
But you know what? We are blessed because Frank is with us through technology. You can always be with us through technology. Our phone number, 713-440-8870. Hello, Frank.
Hello, guys. What's up? It is Thursday, and it's beautiful out. A nice north wind. I don't know if you've been outside. It's gorgeous.
Well, we were outside to get here. I think we've been inside since.
Right, from the car to the door. I get it.
Yeah.
So guess where I am? I'm at a luncheon today.
Uh-huh.
I have emceed the Arms Wide Adoption Services Luncheon for really benefits foster kids all across the state. It's a free service for parents who want to adopt foster children, and absolutely free. And so it's a great service. I've done it now. I've emceed the luncheon for 11 years. We've already raised, before we even start the luncheon, $140,000. We're hoping to raise another $50,000 at the luncheon. So,
that's great.
Yeah, it is. It's great. It's right over at the Briar Club, and they asked me actually before our show even started. I said, "Well, okay, I'll just commit to this." But
well,
since my last luncheon I've committed to, you'll have to be happy to know that.
Since you're doing good, we'll allow you not to be here. But you have to be doing good to get the day off.
Well, I can see you on YouTube, and it looks very lonely there without me.
Oh,
your chair sits. We should put a wreath on his chair when he's not. If you'd like to see it, you can go to YouTube, and you can just look for the Houston Public Media channel, and you can see it. Quickly wrap it up. How's the weekend going to look?
It's going to be beautiful. We have this front that's meandering through. We may catch a shower late tonight or tomorrow morning, but then it turns really beautiful for the weekend. Highs of 80, lows of 60. Low dew points, low humidity. It's going to be one more spectacular May weekend. So make a plan to enjoy it.
Well, start making your weekend plans, folks. And Frank, start making your plans to come back to work tomorrow.
Yep, I'll see you in studio tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much. Frank Billingsley, who usually sits in our chairs with us here, but he's out being a do-gooder.
You know what else is going to be on tomorrow?
What else?
Another episode of Cold Coffee.
That's cool. And who's going to be on Cold Coffee?
So Caitlin Monty, she was a former Fox 26 News anchor. And, as we head into Mother's Day
weekend, which, as we just heard, will be a beautiful weekend to celebrate our mothers.
To celebrate Mom. And, we had a great conversation about being at the top of your game and also becoming a mom.
I wonder who else in this studio could think about that. Interesting.
Yes, so it's going to be a great conversation.
I also hear Lizzie Fletcher is going to join us tomorrow.
Yes,
we'll
Lizzie
talk more
Fletcher.
about that in a moment. First, I just want to quickly remind all of you how you can engage with us. You saw how Frank did it. Just pick up the phone and call us, 713-440-8870. You can also text us at that number. We are on YouTube, as we always say. Remember, when you go and visit us on YouTube, you can just look for the Houston Public Media channel, click the like, subscribe, and ring that bell when you're there, so you'll always be updated on what we're doing. Or you can just go to the Hello Houston website, hellohouston.org, and click that bar and find us there. And of course, you can always email us, because today we're doing our current obsessions.
Yes.
So we need your input on this one. This is important that you guys join us on it. At the end of the show, we gather up throughout the whole show all of what are the things that are obsessing you, that are keeping you engaged. What can't you go to bed without streaming, or a book you can't go down, or that song you've annoyed everyone in your office with. I got one of those. And you want to share it with all of us. So you can do that either by calling us, texting us, or emailing talk@hellohouston.org.
And I want to say there's no obsession too out there that we want to know about.
We want to know about those.
That guilty pleasure that you're maybe a little even embarrassed to say, that's the one we want.
I'll give you one right now. I became obsessed. It's not in my list when we get to it, but I become obsessed with trying to recreate Kentucky Fried Chicken at home. And,
wow.
I haven't gotten my spice blend right yet. But that was one thing I was obsessed with last weekend. So, see, you can go that far out, or even more. You had a shocker. What just came across your screen?
Well, we just got a comment that we need to double check on, but Fritz Goldman said, breaking news, white smoke.
Do we have a pope?
Do we have a pope?
Oh, we need to get our pope expert on the line if we can. CNN is confirming it.
Yes.
And what we learned yesterday was that if it came quickly, it would probably be continuing the beliefs of Pope Francis, his agendas.
Yeah.
Now, does 2 days mean quickly, or did they mean just if it happened yesterday? But we've got white smoke. We have the conclave will be unlocked, opened. They will be back among the cardinals will come out, and we'll know more information. We'll see if we can get more information on that. Thank you for that.
Yes,
Fritz. I was watching it, and I was very excited to see. I know this isn't what we're supposed to be talking about right now, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. They said that they went to lunch, and they came back from lunch while I was coming in this morning, and they said during that lunch break, that's often when a lot of the campaigning happens, because when they're in the conclave voting period, they're voting, they count, they vote again. There's no real debate. When they break for lunch or meals, now they voted yesterday a couple times, they voted today in the morning a few times, that's when agreements can be reached. And it seems like they were accurate, because they can't. I can't wait to find out. We'll find out more.
NPR has also confirmed this. Cardinal Dominic Mamberti, a 73-year-old Frenchman born in Morocco, is expected to make the announcement unless he himself is elected Pope.
Oh, so we'll watch to see
this
who...
is fascinating. So we will be sure to keep you updated on that.
As it is happening.
As it's happening.
So don't forget about your obsession. If you're obsessed about who's going to be the Pope, share that with us. Anyway, we always like to start the show off with the headlines of the day. Even though we just broke the biggest headline of the day, there may be a new... And I do want to make one last point on this.
How much coffee have you had today already?
Enough. Yesterday, I mentioned the Pope being the spiritual leader and leader of millions of people. And I wanted to correct that. It's almost 1.5 billion people. And I felt really bad underplaying it, So I just wanted you to know, we are talking about a huge chunk of the world's population that is moved, inspired, follows this leader of this important organization. Regardless of your religion, it will have an impact on your life, how 1.5 billion people decide to live theirs. So just throwing that
And
out
I
there.
recently read that Catholicism is on the rise within younger generations.
And I think
families.
Francis had a lot to do with that.
I totally
He
agree
spoke
with that,
to a younger audience. He ripped down those walls of distance between the papacy and the people. And I think that's... If we can get our papal expert on the line, I hope we do. That way we can...
I grew up in a Catholic household, and my niece is actually going to have her first communion coming soon. And I think my one thing, though, is that childcare Catholics. We got to get our child care under. I'm not practicing Catholic right now. However, that is one of the things that it's so tough. They have a baby crying room, but after that, you're on your own.
Oh, you mean in the churches?
In the church. And so I spend my entire time like during Mass shushing my kiddos. Anyway, that was
God's
my
love
soapbox.
shines on you, I'm sure, still. You go to church, you take your kids to church. Good for you.
Amen. Okay.
Amen. So there is white smoke. We have a new pope. We just don't know who yet. But we'll let you know if we find out in the next few minutes over the next couple hours. Okay, moving on. Other topics of, though this is probably the topic, but we'll go with yours.
But there is a lot happening, and here locally, as we gear up for hurricane season, there are some concerns as to why there are nearly a dozen National Weather Service office vacancies in the Houston area. On Monday, 3 House Democrats, Representative Lizzie Fletcher, Sylvia Garcia, and Al Green, sent a letter to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration asking why the National Weather Service's Houston-Galveston office will soon lose its top 3 leadership staffers. In the letter, the representatives called the vacancies a staffing crisis. The station meteorologist in charge, the warning coordination meteorologist, and the science and operations officer are expected to leave due to, quote, significant staffing reductions directed by President Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Again, Representative Lizzie Fletcher represents Texas' 7th Congressional District, which includes parts of Houston. She was the lead author of this letter. She said the Houston area office is vital to the community, especially during hurricane season, which spans from June through November. Again, Representative Fletcher will be joining us live in studio tomorrow to discuss in more detail. For now, we would love to discuss this with you. How important is it to you to have the Houston-Galveston National Weather Service office staffed with key roles? Is it vital to our area, or is this just another political play from local Democrats? Give us a call, 713-440-8870, or you can text us as well at 713-440-8870.
You saw me take my big breath of air.
I know, I apologize.
I had something to say. No, please. We want to hear from you. That's more important.
Yeah.
I guess this is to be expected. When you cut massively without the focus on the what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say the minutia, but the individual responsibilities of every position. Yes, we can all agree that government is bloated. I don't think there's any question there.
Right.
But when you start just doing sweeping cuts, something's going to go that you may not realize you need until all of a sudden you need it. We in this area are frightfully alerted to the fact of how important it is for accurate understanding of our weather patterns and what's happening in our area, because we have seen the devastation and the harm that comes from not being prepared, and even when we are prepared. So to lose those key points, those key positions, very difficult, and I hope that I hate to think we're going to learn our lesson. That seems a little after the fact.
I really hope not.
I wish we can, and I'm happy that the representatives are making an issue of it. What I just hope is that it doesn't become a political party play.
Correct.
Oh, well, we're going to be upset about this because we're this side, or we're not because we're that side. But in this case, it does impact us.
Right. And that's exactly what I hope. I hope we put the politics aside and say, hey, listen, just from an absolute logistics standpoint, we in this area have learned a lot of lessons. And unfortunately, we continue to learn lessons. And we know what we know now for the better. And so moving forward, I think the issue that I see here is that okay, there's 12 vacancies. We understand we are cutting back. But to have 3 key roles, that is where it starts to get a little bit like we need a captain of this ship. And this ship is going into hurricane season, and we need it now.
And I understand across the country, maybe these aren't as vital positions in other, we call them markets, other areas. But as I often ask when I'm talking to anyone on this show, it's lessons learned from other areas that may face similar situations. I hope the country is looking at our region and learning lessons we have learned and using that in making these decisions moving forward. But when you're moving really quickly, you don't have that detail in what you're doing. And so sometimes there's an old expression for it I can't think of, but maybe John will know. John's calling us in at 713-440-8870, and he's calling from the Energy Corridor. John, what's on your mind?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Approximately a month ago, the transmitter for the weather radio burned up. I I heard. And now there's no weather radio, let alone the lack of people to make the place run right. The current president has hobbled things. That's my comment. I hope it gets better. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, John. I do want to remind all of you, though, that through emergency situations, News 88.7, Houston Public Media, continues to broadcast. Granted, our weather predictions and our weather reporting can get limited when offices like these do not function well, but we will be with you through that, and that's what your support allows to happen.
Yes.
And I'm going to go a little off topic here and say, that's part of the concern with the funding cuts for NPR and PBS, is what a lot of people don't realize is in a good chunk of the country, the only local broadcasting entities they have are their public media stations. And if you cut that funding, in a major city like us, there are ways we find funding. We are well funded by our community. But in smaller markets, they rely on this money from the federal government. If that's taken away, they don't have local broadcasting. We're proud to come out and say, we're here for you during storms. You know it. Even when other TV stations and stuff join in with us to get the message out because we're reliable. When you look at the National Weather Service and what's happening over there, you can be concerned.
Right. And that's one of the things I think that we take a great pride in, is that we are a service to our community right here in Houston.
So keep that in mind. Do I have time to go on to my story? I think so. I thought this was kind of a fascinating story. After a year of having dueling pride parades, remember this last year? There was the one Houston Pride Committee, and then a new Faces of Pride came up, and they both had parades 1 week apart from each other. Well, guess what? Isn't happening this year. Pride Houston 365, which has been putting on a parade for nearly 50 years, will have its annual festival and parade on June 28th. Houston's new Faces of Pride, which began in 2023, organized a parade last summer, will no longer be doing so, according to the Mayor's Office of Special Events. We have not heard a response back. Our newsroom has reached out to Houston's new Faces of Pride for a response and haven't heard back yet. But on Wednesday, the event calendar on the organization's website did not show any scheduled events for June, which is Pride Month. What are your thoughts on dueling Pride parades? Are you glad now there is back to only one? And do you plan on going? Give us a call. Let us know. 713-440-8870.
Unpopular opinion. Yes, we need one. 2 is overkill.
I don't know if that's an unpopular opinion.
Okay. I was going to say, I think we need to see one.
We have had 2 MLK Day parades.
Yeah.
We have had multiple St. Patrick's Day parades. I just think some believe divide and conquer. Others, I think it dilutes.
Yeah.
And for me, there can be problems in an organization. If you have trouble with the problems in that organization, join that organization, try and straighten them out. In this particular case, as opposed to launching a second organization, which is going to pull support, pull focus, confuse those that you're trying to reach with your message and your celebration. I'm all for just the one. I hate to say it. And in full disclosure, I did serve on what is now Pride 365. Back then it was Pride Houston. I served on their board of directors for a while.
Right. And I'm going to sound grumpy right now, but also traffic.
You don't want the problem of traffic.
I don't want to be driving around and
I also got confused which one I was supposed to go to and what time and where they were, and I'm like,
too much.
Okay, a couple of tidbits. You want a couple of tidbits today?
Yes.
What can I tell you about? You know those old Sears stores that keep closing down?
Yeah.
One of them is having a rebirth. It's going to be Score Entertainment.
Interesting.
They're going to take the 150,000 square foot space at 13131 U.S. Highway 59 North. There's an easy address for you. It's at the Deerbrook Mall. And they're going to turn it into a new entertainment complex is the idea.
Cool.
According to the project filing, it is, as I said, in this place where the Sears at the Willowbrook Mall was, or Deerbrook Mall. A lot going on there.
Yeah. You know what else is very interesting?
Tell me something else.
This week, Weight Watchers announced that it's filing for bankruptcy. I find that fascinating because, in the 90s, it was a big deal. And I'm going to say it, Mom, forgive me. But she did Weight Watchers. And I remember the whole points and all of that going back and forth. Now you can just take Ozempic.
Yes and no. I mean, I think that there's still what Weight Watchers did do was, and I was never a member. I knew a lot of people throughout my life who were a member of Weight Watchers.
I think my mom was
a lot of moms.
Yes.
It's that it was trying to help to teach you how to eat properly. And so even with these services, these pills, these medications, these injections, it reduces your desire to eat, but is it a realistic long-term answer, especially at the costs of these medications? Yeah. So when you come back off them, there is regain of weight. Now, Weight Watchers' concept was teach you how to eat and then be accountable.
But they taught you how to eat with their own brand of like protein bars and
the protein bars it's not like Jenny Craig, who you had to buy the program and buy her food. Yeah,
Jenny Craig,
who I interviewed 1,000 years ago when Jenny Craig was Jenny Craig. Weight Watchers tried to teach you a management style, and then they commercialized their name and sent it out, and you could buy Weight Watchers bars, and they were
That's true, and I think they also tried to make community where you would have they would have meetings,
right? And in some ways, they say Ozempic and different drugs are the reason for its going away, but I think it is also the internet, because you can have a group online now.
That's true.
You don't have to meet somewhere. These folks I knew back in the 80s would go to a meeting, and it was their social club. It was their book club of food. But now you can do it online. So maybe just the whole idea of Weight Watchers is outdated.
But I also just want to say I am not saying in any way, shape, or form just get on Ozempic. I want to clarify there is a whole art to it. But coming up on Hello Houston, a new poll gauges how Texans are feeling about the economy, President Trump, and more. We'll discuss with the director of the Texas Politics Project at the University of Texas. And we continue to take your calls on today's topics at 713-440-8870. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
Houston Public Media exists for and by the will of Southeast Texas. We appreciate our visionary supporters for enabling us to be the essential source for independent journalism and programs that inform, inspire, and engage all Houstonians. Angela Bishop, Judy and Dr. James Bozeman, Andrea B. Bryant, Kathy Butler, the Michael and Rebecca Simo Foundation, Janet F. Clark, Marion and Paul Cones. Thank you.
The biggest, baddest bird you ever heard of. On the brink of perishing forever, it does not sound like a love story, Snappers, but it is. On the next Snap Judgment, Birdzilla. Snap Judgment. Do not miss it.
Saturday evening at 8, followed by Radio Lab at 9 on News 88.7.
You could hear the air traffic controller who was dealing with the downed technology saying, "Attention all aircraft, radar contact is lost. Radar contact is lost," when you listen to the audio recordings from that day.
I'm Rachel Abrams. That's Today on the Daily from the New York Times.
You can hear the Daily tonight at 7 o'clock.
I'm Peter Sagal. The president wants to reopen Alcatraz to deter crime, but what about all the people who commit crimes just to get an affordable place to live in San Francisco? Join us for the show that asks the right questions. That's Wait, Wait from NPR.
Saturday and Sunday at 10 a.m.
Support comes from Baylor College of Medicine, creating tomorrow's medicine today. Known for their medical research and innovation, Baylor College of Medicine is a proud sponsor of Houston Matters with Craig Cohen, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. on News 88.7.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Frank is off today, but you still have Celeste and Ernie with you.
Hello.
Hello. You know, they often say where there's smoke, there's fire. Where there's white smoke, there's a pope. And we are very excited. Craig Considine is back with us. He's the author and scholar of Religion and Interfaith Dialogue at Rice University. He was with us yesterday when we were talking about this. Welcome back to the program. We've got a pope.
We do. We do indeed. There is white smoke on the second day. It looks like it was the fourth vote. And we should be hearing, I'd say, max 45 minutes to an hour. So,
wow.
The cardinal's name will be announced, and then we'll also learn the name that the new pontiff will take, and that will give an idea of the kind of administration that he's going to run.
Before we get into the new name, which I do want to ask you about that and the ideas behind that and the concept of that whole practice, you had said yesterday, and it stayed with me, the whole concept of if it happened quickly, more than likely it's following Francis's thoughts. If it was delayed longer, it may be a new positioning. 2 days, is that long or short in your opinion?
It's short. It's short. Pope Francis was 5. I believe Pope Benedict was 4. Pope John Paul II was 8. And he was really, let's refer to it as an outcast. When he actually went on the balcony of blessings at St. Peter's when his name was announced, he said that they had to go to the end of the world to get me. So with this vote today, I think we could very well see a continuation of Francis's legacy, progressive legacy. So we could see Francis II. If it's not someone aligned with Francis's progressive approach, I do think it'll be one of the familiar names that has been in the media, someone like Cardinal Erdo, someone perhaps, though it's far-reaching, Cardinal Sarah from Guinea, who is a little bit conservative. And, yesterday I was reading a Washington Post article, and it mentioned Cardinal Prevost from the United States as being a late contender as the general congregation came. So wouldn't it be quite something if we had an American pope? That would be quite something.
Wow. Well, I know that we will know hopefully within the next hour or so. Would you be available to pop back in once we know who it is?
Let's do it. I'm here.
I'm assuming you're probably very popular right now as folks are trying to figure all this out.
It's an extremely busy time, but it's also extremely important. This is the third conclave that I witnessed. The Francis one had a big impact on me, and we shall see. It's very exciting.
Well, we will be back in touch. Stand by. And thank you very much, Craig, for joining us again.
Thank you. See you soon.
Craig Considine is author and scholar of religion and interfaith dialogue at Rice University. So to recap, there is white smoke at the Vatican, which means they have chosen a pope. We just don't know the name yet. So Craig was telling us that probably within the next hour, we will be told. And Craig is ready to rejoin us when we know who is going to be leading almost 1.5 billion Catholics worldwide. Fascinating time and fascinating to be on air while it's happening.
That's right. So coming back into Texas, the Texas Politics Project survey gauges how registered Texas voters feel about the state of politics on both a local and national level. The survey is conducted by the Department of Government at the University of Texas at Austin. And as President Trump is now in his 101 days of office for a second term, his overall approval rating nets positive, but just barely. 47% of Texas voters polled approved of his performance in office, while 46% disapproved. To tell us more about the poll, Dr. James Henson, director of the Texas Politics Project. Welcome, Dr. Henson, to Hello Houston.
It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Before we get into all of the discussion, what I just want to clarify is when actually were these folks polled? What was the time period so that we can place what had happened in the world around them?
Sure. When, where, and how. We were in the field collecting data from April 18th to the 28th. We had 1,200 registered voters, and we use YouGov for data collection. This is, I think, we do a lot of counting, but I think this is the 67th poll in the series, which we started in 2008.
And so, it came
before, it's a big time series.
Came before Liberation Day, correct?
No, it was after Liberation.
After Liberation
Day. Did I say that? April. I'm sorry. April 18th to the 28th.
No, you were right. I'm wrong.
So, Dr.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Dr. Henson, based on this latest poll that you have, is the honeymoon stage of Trump's presidency over for Texans, or is it really too early to tell?
Well, I think it's over for some of them that were probably not inclined to give him much of a honeymoon anyway. But, he's still holding on to Republican support. So, you mentioned that 47 support, 46 or approved, disapproved, being 47, 46. That was just a little bit down from when we were in the field in February, when he was at 52.38. And what we saw was just a little bit, 2 or 3 points of attrition in every major partisan group. In other words, Republicans dropped only slightly from 92% in February to 89 in April. And we saw similar drops in the other groups. Underlying thing here is that while there's a lot of context here, people have a fixed attitude of Donald Trump. They know what they think of him, whether they're Republicans, Democrats, independents. That's useful for us in a way because it holds that personal piece equal, and we are able to kind of look at what's going on in the policy environment.
So when you do look at that, when we're talking about almost fealty to this leader by his supporters, that seems to stay pretty consistent. Even when you see a slight dip because of margin of error and all things considered, is that really significant when it's within his base? And do we need to see shift in his base to see shift overall?
Yes and yes. So,
okay.
I think it's, we have to be careful in looking at these, 2-3 point shifts. I absolutely agree and appreciate the nuance there. I think what we look at in this is when we see those small shifts kind of in each group, it does tell us that there's a little something going on. That said, we're still very, very early in this presidency, and there is a lot going on. And so, we're gonna wait and see. And it's always like this. We get the new data, we're excited to see it, and then what we're looking for is, okay, well, let's see what happens in the next one.
Yeah, I know Celeste wants to jump in with policy. I've got one more nuts and boltsy question about the polling. How quickly do what you've seen over the years of doing this? How quickly do people's thoughts and opinions change when events change around them? And what I mean by that is, okay, so the tariffs, maybe there's a lot of talk about tariffs and all of that. Do people hold on to their beliefs usually for a period of time after announcements and then start to shift? Or do people pretty much react in the moment?
Well, it's, as you might imagine, it's complicated. So the answer to that is there are times when when there is a big, what we call an external or an exogenous shock, when there's something big that happens, you tend to see quick movement. But that depends on whether but it's dependent on two things. One, how closely held or how is the opinion that people are bringing to bear? In other words, is this big event meeting, is it something new, or is it confronting within our respondents an already held belief? And that tends to be a bulwark against rapid changes. The other thing is durability. What we often see is big shifts in opinion, but they often don't last. And so then after a certain amount of time, people kind of revert to the mean.
Well, Dr. Henson, when we are looking at the slight dip in Texans' approval of President Trump, what would you equate that to? What are they saying? Well, my approval rating is not as much as it was before.
Yeah, I think in this case, if you look at the other results in the poll and the policy stuff, it sounds like you want to talk about, this is driven a lot by the economic uncertainty that was already out there. And I think the way that the president has aggravated that. So there's that piece in which the economy looms so large right now. The other piece of this, I think, that it helps explain what we're seeing is a really interesting shift in where people are paying attention. And this in some ways goes back to the previous question. And that is, for a long time, one of the most predictable attributes of polling in Texas was that when we asked people, what is the most important problem facing the state? Well, more than half, and sometimes as high as 70% of Republicans say either immigration or border security. And that just defines so much in the political universe and created a center of gravity in the Republican Party that Donald Trump exploited very productively for him, obviously in political terms. Now what we're seeing is a certain degree of attention moving away from immigration and border security. The underlying attitudes aren't changing very much. for example, that Republicans favor a more punitive kind of enforcement-based strategy. But the share of Republicans that say that immigration and border security are the most important problems facing the state has declined by about 33 points between this last poll and, you use February 24 as a baseline. That's really significant. And at the same time, we've seen attention among Republicans diverted to some degree to economic-related issues, mostly prices.
Does that mean that they feel that the immigration is working, so they're less concerned with it, or is that the growth of the concern over the economy doesn't give them enough bandwidth to worry about both? Well, we don't know for sure, but what we suspect is that it's both. And so obviously the big driver of media coverage in the news for, most of the Biden term was the flow, the increased flow of migrants on the borders, the second order problems that were coming from that, the political response to that, where there was criticism of the Democrat in the White House or Governor Abbott's initiative with Operation Lone Star. Mm-hmm. Now that situation has really abated for the time being, at least, I think that goes to your other part of your hypothesis. As the economy has gotten more salient and more problematic, that, it's the combination of this problem seems not as prominent, this one seems more prominent.
Mm-hmm. So Texas's 89th legislature is wrapping up soon. Dr. Henson, what are some of the top priorities Texans are looking at within the state?
Yeah, these were also, very interesting results in the poll. So we gave people about a dozen general issue areas and said, tell us how important you think it is for the legislature to address this. The top 5 among Texans overall were pretty practical and a mixture of things we've heard a lot about and things we haven't. So number one was, more than 80% of folks told us that it was either extremely or very important for the legislature to improve the reliability of the state's energy grid. Mm-hmm. Second, lower the costs of everyday goods and services. Third, happily for the leadership, reduce property taxes. Mm-hmm. Fourth, improve the reliability of the state's water supply. And fifth, increase access to health care. All of those were cited as very or extremely important by 70% or more.
Interesting.
And so those are up there at the top. Mm-hmm. But then if you drill down, there are partisan differences, as you might imagine.
If you are a Texas politician, maybe with the name Paxton or Cornyn, and you're looking mm-hmm. at this survey, well, how do you think you should be interpreting it, and how should you react to it?
Yeah, I think, look, if you're part of Lieutenant Governor Patrick and Ken Paxton are going to have slightly different competing interests in this, I should say. I think writ large, if you're a Texas elected official right now, you're probably a Republican and you're thinking about how your agenda is unfolding, you're probably feeling pretty good about this. The property tax legislation is not passed, but the signals coming out of the legislature earlier this week are that the House and the Senate have kind of reconciled their competing visions of how to execute this, much anticipated. And when you look at the other things, the legislature is paying attention to infrastructure. There's mm-hmm. not a lot of big headline-grabbing legislation, but there are big bills on water working their way mm-hmm. through the process. They're still working out some of the differences in the water bill, but I think everybody expects that's going to go somewhere. There are a bunch of grid bills and, electricity-related bills that are working their way through. I think you're feeling pretty good, but you're feeling even better. I think probably more to the underlying current of your question. If you're a Republican like Lieutenant Governor Patrick or Ken Paxton, and you're considering running and you're thinking about what the primary election is going to look like next year, the top 5 issues among Republicans are reduced property taxes. You got to hit there. Pass legislation that requires local cooperation with federal immigration efforts. That's likely to happen. Reduce access to bail for violent criminals. That's third. That's moving through the system. Improve the grid is also fourth among Republicans. And then work on water, also prominent among Republicans. So, you're hitting on all cylinders really on those issues. The only thing that's making you nervous is that the other thing in that Republican top priority, as it is overall, is lowering prices. And you're kind of at the mercy of the animal spirits of the economy and, I guess similarly animal spirits in the White House. And there's not much you can do about that.
Right. Dr. James Henson is the director of the Texas Politics Project at the University of Texas. Dr. Henson, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
It's a real pleasure. I enjoyed talking with you all.
Thank you. Coming up on Hello Houston, nurses are vital to our healthcare system. Often our first interaction when we aren't feeling our best, and yet workplace violence against nurses is on the rise. What we should know about this alarming trend when we come back right here on News 88.7.
Listen for The Last Year in the Life of the Beatles, 1969. A chronological ride through the Beatles' 1969 calendar.
George Harrison left the band, I believe, on January 10th.
The rooftop concert was clearly a signature moment for the Beatles.
They're the kind of idiots that really think that Yoko split the Beatles, probably, or Alan, it's the same joke,
Be listening for The Last Year in the Life of the Beatles, 1969. Saturday evening at 7 on News 88.7.
It's an anniversary that's both joyous and somber. May 8th, 1945. The date when Nazi Germany surrendered to the Allies, ending World War II. But 80 years ago, what did VE Day sound like?
We're thinking of those who will come back, and the many who will never come back.
We sample what those in uniform heard from Armed Forces Radio on the next 1A.
You can hear 1A. It's coming up this afternoon at 2 p.m.
Support comes from DePelchin Children's Center. May is National Foster Care Awareness Month, and DePelchin is celebrating the foster parents who ensure that Houston area children are part of safe and loving families. Learn more at depelchin.org. Support comes from Carr, Riggs & Ingram, CPAs and Advisors, a top 25 nationally ranked full-service accounting and advisory firm offering tax, audit, accounting, consulting, and advisory services. Learn more at cricpa.com.
Did you know Houston Public Media accepts vehicle donations? If you've got a car or truck that you don't need anymore, donate it to our station. It could be worth hundreds of dollars or more in support. Go online to houstonpublicmedia.org/cars for more info.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
According to a recent survey by the Texas Center for Nursing Workforce Studies, over the last year, 3 out of 4 Texas nurses have been subjected to violence, sexual harassment, or verbal abuse. This rising level of workplace violence has left many nurses feeling stressed or overwhelmed, with many even considering leaving the nursing profession. To discuss workplace violence against nurses is Leah Blackwell, the Chief Nursing Officer at Memorial Hermann, Texas Medical Center, and Eric Clay, Vice President of Security Services for Memorial Hermann Health Services. Welcome to both of you. I hope I don't over-dramatically read that intro, but it is kind of shocking and terribly alarming when you talk about 3 out of 4 nurses face this.
It is. So OSHA actually reports that 73% of all workplace violence incidences happen in healthcare. And so I think when you hear that statistic, it really brings it home that the people who want to keep you safe and take care of you don't always feel safe and often experience violence.
Eric, I've spent a lot of time in and out of the hospitals of late working and dealing and helping with my mom. And I for one, can say I understand how people's tension levels, anger sparks up, concern. We're there as family members, so concerned about our family member, and they are the only person we imagine exists. Where the healthcare staff there, they're dealing with lots of people, and I can see the stress building. What can people do to reduce that stress, to step back from the conflict on both sides so that these things don't happen? Because I'm assuming that's a reason a lot of this happens.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons why we see these escalated numbers of workplace violence. And to answer your question, I think really just, and I know it's asking a lot sometimes because, again, you are spending a lot of time waiting in the ED. You are very concerned about yourself. You're in pain or you're concerned about someone else. But just to be calm and be patient, because these caregivers are moving through as quickly as they possibly can to provide the quality care that people need. And if you are escalating, you're agitated, and you're causing additional problems, that results in them having to pull away resources to come to talk to you, which slows the process down even more. So I can assure you that they are doing everything they possibly can to provide the highest level of care they can.
Which to me makes complete sense, right? You're talking about this, but your first interaction a lot of times is with a nurse. And often, even when you don't feel well, they, like we were just discussing, they're patient and they're kind. And so what does nurse violence look like, or violence against nurses look like typically?
Yeah, we hear it from our frontline caregivers, nurses and physicians who experience it, and it comes in a variety of forms. So it can be verbal, so just start out as kind of yelling and sort of calling you out of your name a little bit, using curse words and inappropriate language. We see it as physical, so it can be, I'm going to throw something at you and I may not hit you this time, to actually putting their hands on nurses. You know, and then there is sometimes a sexual piece to it as well. And so just sort of being inappropriately to the female staff. So that's something we always struggle with as well.
Is there any training? Do nurses have to go through any type of self-defense training?
So we provide de-escalation training, and so all of our staff go through kind of a beginner or intro-level de-escalation training where they learn those techniques. But I think the one thing that Memorial Hermann has done really well has said that's not a nurse's job. Get security, and that's where, you know, we are so appreciative of our partnership with our security team, who steps in so that they can stay the nurse. They need to stay the nurse, and they need to stay the caregiver and stay in that lane of the relationship with the patient, and let our security team do kind of boundary setting and help to manage those situations, so that they can really do the job that they're, you know, that we're asking them to do and that they want to do.
Again, from firsthand experience, we had a hospital stay recently, as we talked about on the show. I was off the show that day, and the nurse came into the room, and I was so worked up, and I was saying, "Why isn't this? Why isn't that happening? We need these things," and he handled it so well that in the moment I came out of my anger and thought he got training on how to de-escalate this situation, because he let me vent, and then he said, "What would you like me to work on first? Where do you think I should put my attention at this moment to help you with what you're talking about?" And I thought, damn, he is doing this so well I can't be angry, and I have had to stop and think about what am I actually asking for instead of just being frustrated. And I'm usually a pretty calm guy, so I know in those situations it can get heated.
Yeah.
I would never imagine physically pushing, touching, things like that, but I guess it happens, and I'm just shocked by it.
It does happen, and we know that the numbers that Leah talked about, those numbers are greatly underreported. There's a significant more amount of violence that just goes unreported in the healthcare sector. And some of the things that we work on, as you alluded to, was really the non-escalation training. We're looking to try to prevent you from escalating to that point, being very responsive. And I would remind people that people who get into caregiving, they do it because they want to do it for the right reasons. They want to help people. So it's not surprising to hear that nurse was very attentive and very agreeable with you and tried to help you as much as they possibly could.
Shortly after, that nurse did not return to me, and a new nurse did come in. And I got the feeling it was they knew, here's an agitated person. I don't know why I'm telling people how upset I got in the hospital, but that they had an agitated person. He's already had a conflict with one nurse. We're sending in a different nurse because then we start a new relationship. And that new nurse came in, and he also was extremely attentive and listened to what I was saying. And it was a really smart move, because now I already had this negative interaction with a nurse who did handle it well, but they knew to switch out. And I was like, you can't do that all the time, but they've taken a movement to try and work through that. You're nodding over here too.
Yeah, we do that. We have charge nurses, right, who kind of lead the team during that shift, and so they will kind of make those pivots to see if they can create a better relationship.
And they did,
and maybe meet the needs of whoever that irritated person is, whether it's a patient or a loved one. And so those are pivots that we try to make, recognizing that sometimes it's just a little bit of a frictionless relationship. But we just ask that people stay as respectful as we're trying to be with them as well.
And we want to remind you, you can join the conversation right here on Hello Houston at 713-440-8870. We're speaking with Leah Blackwell, the Chief Nursing Officer at Memorial Hermann, and Eric Clay, the Vice President of Security Services of Memorial Hermann Health System. What do you find most surprising when we're looking at nurse violence? I find when I was reading about this, the sexual harassment component. I can't imagine being a nurse and you are there to care for somebody and then to be violated in that form. Can you give us a little bit about more information on that?
I think probably females in general encounter that in general in the world. And so sometimes it just, when you feel like you're in that caregiver relationship and are having those inappropriate comments made, it makes it a little harder because you want to stay professional. And that's where we do probably make pivots in changing assignments and trying to make things a little bit easier, and so that they don't have to go back into that room. That's where we engage our partners, we engage our leaders to go in and have boundary setting conversations and say that's not appropriate. And sometimes it's just teaching people what's an appropriate hospital behavior.
Right. And it's amazing to me that some people wouldn't know that. But at the same time, is there any type of buddy systems? Like, do nurses go in together? I mean, because a hospital room is pretty intimate. So what type of protections and structures do you have for nurses around sexual harassment?
Yeah, so if they're in that situation, we always encourage them to use a buddy nurse. We create buddy nurses at the beginning of the shift. It is not always and often not practical for them to go in every room together, just based on their patient load and the workflows that need to happen for each patient. But we say when that hair on the back of your neck stands up, there's that one comment, that one sort of outburst moment, get a friend, call security. We are really lucky at Memorial Hermann and the Texas Medical Center that we have a behavioral emergency response team that has behavioral health trained clinicians and social workers on it. So they can call them and we can do an early intervention huddle. We can call a code BERT. We can call a code green if it really is escalating. And so that's really what we're trying to teach nurses is it's not okay. It's not part of your job. And to make sure you're escalating early and getting the true experts in the room, because that's not our objective, that you need to be the expert in how to deflect all this and mitigate those things.
We always invite our listeners to join in the conversation at 713-440-8870. Candace from Kingwood is on the line. You folks will need to put on your headphones to actually hear Candace. Hold for 1 second, Candace, while they put their headphones on. Okay, you're ready to go. Talk to us.
Yes, I was just calling about the nurse.
Yes.
So when I went with my son to the hospital a couple months ago, he had broken his arm, and there was an episode with mental health. Clearly, the guy was unstable, and he had physically assaulted the nurse, and they had multiple people to pull him off. And I was talking to my friends who are nurses, and they said that's something that frequently happens in the ER, and I was just wondering if there was training and different types of stuff on that as well, because it, like the previous guest did say, it did take away from the other needs of the patients, and it was a very big escalation.
Yeah, Candace, thank you for that call. Thoughts on that?
I think I'm going to defer to Eric just to talk through, how we're addressing several things in our ER, because that is our biggest kind of pocket where we see it happen the most.
Yeah, I would say that we know that a tremendous amount of the violence that you see in the healthcare setting occurs in the ED. As you alluded to, that's where people come in. They're in pain sometimes. They're waiting a significant amount of time. So we put a lot of effort into making sure that our EDs are as safe and secure as we possibly can. We put in things such as weapons detection, concealed weapons detection to prevent firearms and knives from coming in. We spend a lot of amount of time on training our security staff and our caregivers as well in the de-escalation, non-escalation, how to keep themselves safe. A lot of investment around CCTV cameras. We have.
I just want to remind everyone there that it should not be the nurse's responsibility to keep herself safe in her work environment. We, as those coming and visiting you at your workplace, need to understand all the pressure that they're under and what they're doing, and we need to stay civil.
That's right. Thank you, Leah Blackwell, the Chief Nursing Officer at Memorial Hermann, as well as Eric Clay, Vice President of Security Services at Memorial Hermann Health Systems. Coming up in Hour 2 of Hello Houston, we'll talk with Houston native actor Brett Cullen. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from Alley Theater, presenting Primary Trust, a story of friendship, change, and second chances. When Kenneth loses his longtime job, quiet nights at the Tiki Bar spark a journey of transformation. May 2nd through May 25th. Tickets at alleytheater.org.
Hey, it's Michael Barbaro, host of The Daily. Join us here on Houston Public Media every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. The Daily focuses on just one or two stories each day, offering listeners a 30-minute deep dive portrait of the characters and human stakes driving the news. That's The Daily from the New York Times, weeknights at 7 on News 88.7.
Partly cloudy and 80 right now, looking for a high today near 87. This is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston. News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 12:01.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Voices erupt in Vatican City. A new pope has been chosen. Here's NPR's Jason DeRose.
White smoke began billowing out of the chimney atop the Sistine Chapel a short while ago, signaling that the 133 cardinals cloistered there have made their decision. The newly elected pope is expected to appear soon on the balcony overlooking St. Peter's Square and offer his blessing to the city and the world. Before then, the cardinal electors sing a hymn of praise known as the Te Deum and approach the newly elected pope to pay him homage. Just before the new pope steps onto the balcony, the senior cardinal deacon will appear and declare Habemus Papam, Latin for "We have a pope." Jason DeRose, NPR News, Rome.
Swiss guards in striped uniforms and a marching band dressed in rich blue clothing taking part in a procession, part of the grand ceremony to celebrate the significance of the moment. The election of a new pope to succeed Pope Francis, who died Easter Monday at the age of 88. President Trump and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced a trade deal between their two nations. NPR's Tamara Keith reports it is the first deal announced since Trump launched a global trade war, but the deal isn't actually done.
Trump was in the Oval Office with the UK's Starmer on speakerphone. Both hailed the deal, but Trump let slip that it isn't actually finalized.
The final details are being written up in the coming weeks. We'll have it all very conclusive, but the actual deal is a very conclusive one. We think just about everything's been approved. So good for both countries.
The agreement will open up markets for American agricultural goods like beef and ethanol, while the U.S. would lower tariffs on vehicles from the U.K., think Rolls-Royce. But Trump is leaving in place a 10% tariff on all imports to the U.S. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
TikTok may be facing another ban in the U.S. next month, but for younger voters, it's more than just a social media app. It's a political tool. NPR's Windsor Johnston with more.
Online platforms, especially TikTok, have become powerful tools that young voters are using to organize, amplify, and mobilize around causes they care about. Iona Literat is a professor in the communications department at Columbia University. She says members of Gen Z don't draw hard lines between their digital and real-world lives.
For young people today, that just doesn't make sense. That's totally out of sync with their experience. There's not this clear threshold anymore between the online and the offline. That's definitely applicable to the civic aspects as well.
Literat says youth-led groups have been clear to lawmakers. Ban online platforms like TikTok, and you may lose an entire generation at the ballot box.
It's NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. The deadline to protest your home's property tax appraisal is quickly approaching. News 88.7's Tom Perumian reports on how you can file a protest fast.
Speaking at a press conference Wednesday morning, Harris County Chief Appraiser Roland Altinger had this recommendation.
A real easy way is to protest electronically using our iFile system. Each value notice has a personal, confidential iFile number, which can be used to file your protest and upload your evidence supporting your opinion of value. Through iFile, you may settle your account electronically with our iSettle system.
Now, Altinger notes the iSettle option is only available if you settle with the iFile system. All protests must be filed by May 15th or the 30th day after the notice was delivered, whichever is later. I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
Fort Bend County leaders are urging residents to prepare for what could be an unusually active hurricane season. At a press conference Wednesday, they highlighted a digital billboard in Stafford that will share emergency information during a hurricane. This is Clear Channel Outdoor Vice President for Public Affairs, Lee Villa.
This season promises to be an active one, and we want to remind everyone to continue to be prepared for a storm when it hits.
The county partnered with Clear Channel Outdoor to create the billboard. And the FBI is looking for a local man accused in an arson attack at a bar near Hermann Park 5 years ago. There was an explosion at Bar 5015 back in 2020. Police are looking for Messiah Bryce Shepard. Investigators say he and 3 other men poured 5-gallon containers of flammable liquid onto tables and chairs before setting it on fire. And in sports, the Astros snapped their 3-game losing streak. They beat the Milwaukee Brewers 9-1. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, a personalized program that bases rates on safe driving habits, at Progressive.com. Not available in California or from all agents. This is NPR.
From Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. My mom's... They always catch me with my mic on.
Yes, they do.
It does happen because I should stop talking sometimes. Frank Billingsley, speaking of talking, isn't here with us today. He usually talks with us and is one of the hosts of the show. He has the day off to do some good out in the community, but you're stuck with Celeste and I. But I think it's a pretty good bargain, don't you?
Yes.
You can watch us on YouTube. It's easy to do. Just go to YouTube and look for the Houston Public Media channel, or even easier, go to hellohouston.org. Click that orange bar at the top that says Watch Live, and you can watch us. Don't forget when you're there, like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and join in. There's a great chat group that continues right there alongside the show as it's happening. We also invite you to call or text us, 713-440-8870. I have to stop saying before that because it sounds like it's an afterthought.
No, it's the main thought.
The other main thought is we're doing obsessions today. We're going to be taking your current obsessions, the things that just stick with you, something you're doing, something maybe that annoys everybody else, but you don't care because you love it. That's your obsession. Send them to us. Talk@hellohouston.org.
Sorry, I was just so excited that we got one already.
That you wanted to share?
That I wanted to share. So Matthew Sullivan said, recently I've been salvaging circuit boards out of obsolete PCs due to the precious metals in them. They're potentially worth money, but even if they're not, I've been enjoying a hobby that is also helping deal with the e-waste problem. It's fun to take stuff apart. Well, thanks, Matthew, for sending that in to us.
You know, earlier I mentioned I'm trying to figure out the KFC spice blend for air-fryered fried chicken. chicken, and that became my obsession last weekend. You didn't say any obsessions of yours. I know you were going to do them later, but anything that's less?
I'm kind of obsessed with what's happening right now with the Pope situation.
The new Pope situation.
It is amazing. I had a friend message me. I went to private Catholic school in high school, and I had a friend mention to me, she says, I remember when Pope John Paul II died when we were in high school. I also remember watching the news on it in French class and those ancient TV sets and seeing them blow the white smoke when they chose the next Pope. It's so ritualistic. It's amazing.
And what they saw, we all saw just about an hour ago today, maybe a little more. And I bring that up because if you haven't been following the news, yes, in the Vatican, we had white smoke. A Pope has been chosen. We're waiting to find out who it is. If it happens during this next hour that we're on the air, we will bring it to you live. And if not, I guarantee you NPR is on the story, and they will bring it to you as soon as we know what the name is and what name they are choosing to take to move forward. As Craig Considine was telling us earlier, it tells you a lot about the name they pick. Could he be Francis II? Could it be John Paul III? And that may imply the direction they're going with their papacy and what their policies will be, or at least their feelings that they are being guided toward. And so congratulations to the almost 1.5 billion people on this planet who find the Catholic faith as their faith and have a new leader.
That's right. But moving on to our topics, KTRK is reporting there are tensions mounting within the Harris County Sheriff's Office as deputies are upset over their salaries that fall short of what the Houston Police Department are getting. Following Mayor John Whitmire's high-profile announcement of substantial pay raises for Houston police officers last week, AI-generated images mocking Sheriff Ed Gonzalez have been widely circulated among law enforcement officers in protest of the pay difference. According to Jose Lopez of the Harris County Deputies Organization, the starting salary for a Harris County deputy is approximately $57,000. According to the Houston Police Department website, starting salary for an HPD officer is around $64,000. But under the mayor's proposal, if approved, that figure could jump to $81,000 by July 2025. That would create a $24,000 gap between first-year officers in Houston and Harris County. Do you think Harris County deputies need the same deal or something close? Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
Pay equity, always a problem.
Yeah.
The uncomfortable part of the pay equity here is you have regions that are interconnected. So if you are in the city, you would be making this much. If you're just outside the city lines, such a deep decrease. Mm-hmm. But then there's budgetary differences and changes between what the county has and what the city has. But I think you need some sort of equity, or what's going to end up happening is Harris County loses its law enforcement officers and they come into the city and try and get jobs with the city. And then the burden of what the city police officers have to deal with goes, it is awkward. So I guess for me, I think you need to find pay equity. But then you say, okay, then right outside of Harris County and the counties that connect Harris County. And then as you move further away from a major metropolitan area, the cost of living and the amount that they have in taxes and can collect is lower. So the amount they can pay their law enforcement officers, but they may have a smaller force, so they can pay them more. It's a very complicated equation, but I do think that there should be equity.
Absolutely. I agree.
Was that a lot to say to get to that point?
No, yeah.
What do you think? Should there be? Are you in a position where you make a certain salary and someone in a similar position, maybe in a county, in another organization, another company is making a vastly different salary? Now, what's your concern about that? What do you think? I will tell you, okay, I probably am telling more than I should here. But if you have a story, tell us, 713-440-8870. I built my career working in public media. Notoriously, we make less than commercial media. Mm-hmm. And years ago, I remember Frank Billingsley teasing me and saying that my annual salary was the same as his clothing allowance.
There
I remember that.
Go.
I do believe they are announcing a new pope. So if we can get Craig Considine on the phone in a matter of moments, we will be able to tell you what it all means. And
that's right.
I have another story, but if you can take my story for a minute.
Yes. So Texas House lawmakers debated gun rights and voter protections on Wednesday afternoon related to a bill that would allow election judges to carry a weapon inside a polling place at any time. House Bill 1128 by Representative Carrie Isaac of Dripping Springs allows an election judge, early voting clerk, or deputy early voting clerk who is serving as an election judge to carry a concealed handgun at an early voting or election day polling place as a means of protection for themselves and others. The bill passed 89 to 53 in the House and will now go to the Senate for approval. Do you think judges should carry guns? Give us a call, 713-440-8870. That's tough.
That is a hard one. Yes, we want the safety and protection of our election officials. And honestly, due to the rhetoric, that has become a more stress and a concern that people have.
Yes.
And so it is very bothersome. But should they have guns in there? Are you bringing in a bigger problem? What do you think?
I think that no, we should not allow judges in this case, when we're looking at specifically election judges carrying in polling places. I don't think that's the right move. We understand our elections can get very contemptuous, and I just don't think that's the right place and time to allow that person to do that. That's just
gun rights in our state are a very fascinating thing. And so if you are a state that says it is okay to have guns and to conceal them and to carry them places, then what are we saying as a whole culture? And why I say it like that is, well, then they should be allowed to bring them in there. We are, as a group, saying it is okay to be carrying these. But is it the right thing? Is there a bigger
it's okay
conversation?
To be carrying them. I just don't think they should be in polling areas.
Right. You can't bring cell phones in.
You can't bring cell phones in. We're not going to let you bring a gun in. Okay, moving on. Houston-based Pappas Restaurant announced May 7th that it won the auction to buy Irving-based On the Border Mexican Grill and Cantina, which filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in March. The transaction, which is subject to court approval.
I'm going to pause you there because we have big breaking news. According to CNN, the new pope is Robert Prevost of the U.S., the first American pontiff in history. We're trying to get Craig Considine on the phone. This is surprising news. I think he mentioned that this person, this cardinal, was in the running surprisingly yesterday. It came out that people thought he was kind of a dark horse for it and has been chosen, which is a fascinating development. We are just getting the information. We're live with you on the air, so it's hard to be watching the news coverage, but we're getting the information in here. What do you think of an American pope?
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fascinating. And we were speaking with Craig earlier, and that's exactly what you mentioned. I mean, he said that this could be a possibility, and here we are. Not a high probable one, but here we are.
When we can get Craig on the phone, we can find out too, do Robert Prevost's, Cardinal Prevost, I should say, do his policies align with where Francis was? Is he more conservative? Craig is on the line. This is Craig Considine from Rice University. Craig, we've got a pope.
What a historic moment in time that we have our first American pope in history, Cardinal Prevost.
Fascinating. You mentioned him as coming into the race kind of last minute in our considerations.
I did. Mentioned it at the last minute. He was a late front runner. He was considered, papable, but not one of the really kind of cardinals with a lot of notoriety. But he is a long-term. He's had a long presence in the Vatican. So he was basically in charge of the dicastery for bishops. And that essentially is a massive position within the Vatican. So this is the person who is really responsible for anointing the next bishops. So he was quite close to Pope Francis in this way. Mm-hmm. He also has a lot of experience with his ministry in Peru and Latin America. So you have that continuation, obviously, with Pope Francis being from Argentina. Like I said, he's from Chicago. He went to the Catholic Theological Union in Chicago. He's got a master's of divinity there. And he's an Augustinian. Pope Francis was also a Franciscan, a Jesuit, and a Franciscan at that too. But this is really revolutionary in a lot of ways, not just for the church, but also for global affairs.
So we are speaking with Craig Considine, who is from Rice University, about the new pope that has just been named, and he comes from the U.S., making him the first American pontiff in history. Do we know the name he has chosen?
It was, I ran out. It was Louis. Sorry, I actually missed it.
No, this is just happening.
Louis the something, I believe. Louis the 16th, or
Leo the
I ran out and I actually missed it.
I believe it's Celeste is telling us Louis the 14th.
Yep.
Louis the 14th.
Louis the
right.
14th. What do we know about you? You mentioned he was close with the previous pontiff. What do we know of his policies, of his concerns? Do they align directly with the Pope? Did he have other issues that have been present in his writings that we may see impact his time?
It's a very good question. So you're correct in the sense that he was obviously quite close to Pope Francis. And the fact that this happened in 4 days, it kind of makes sense that they went with someone whose views are quite close to Pope Francis. And a lot of this has to do with his missionary work in Peru. So we might see a continuation here going forward with the Catholic Church, where it carries on with Francis, going to the spot in the world that the church has not historically had a significant presence in. And there's also going to be a missionary element to this as well. So Cardinal Prevost obviously has a lot of experience, in the field. And this is just, it's really shocking in a way. Obviously, I mentioned this morning. This was a name that I heard at the last minute, but this is huge for, of course, the church. We have a new leader. This is huge for America. And then what impact it has on international affairs is really going to be something that everyone needs to pay a close attention to.
And I'm also curious, if I'm not mistaken, he was made a cardinal by Pope Francis only a couple of years ago in 2023. Is it common for someone this recently ascending to that position to move this quickly up the ranks?
That's a good question. To be honest with you, I'm not sure exactly behind this. I do know that Pope Francis was appointed by Pope John Paul II, and Pope John Paul passed away, I believe, in 2006, if my memory is correct. So this is an important point. I think you dropped out on us for a minute there, Craig. Please repeat yourself. So, sorry about that. What I was saying is that, yes, I do think this is relatively rare. Most cardinals are in there for quite some time. I think another thing to keep in mind, too, Cardinal Prevost is only 69.
Right.
He's only 69 years old, which is quite young in terms of, Pope years, if I could say that. So
his impact can be felt for a very long time to come.
That's correct. I mean, Pope Francis was 88 when he passed away. So we could be looking at a decade to 2 decades here.
Do you think this signals anything with the fact of that the American populace is become more secular over the years? Appointing someone who can represent a country such as us so strongly would be a stronger tie to rebuilding a stronger Catholic Church in the U.S.?
Yeah. With the United States, we also have to extend this over to Europe. The secularization in Europe is even stronger, and Europe kind of, in many ways, looks to America as the big brother, to put it kind of bluntly. So what happens here is going to impact what happens over in Europe. So this is a huge potential geopolitical shakeup, but it's also reflective of the ever-changing church. The Catholic Church in the United States is increasingly diverse, but we also see the growing tide of secularization and the rise of the spiritual but not religious. Though I will say this too, recent data right before the conclave, it was showing that Catholicism is kind of growing amongst the youth in the United States, and perhaps this had something to do with Pope Francis's liberal views on certain social issues like same-sex marriage and LGBTQ. So now we have the actual Pope being from America. So I would imagine the youth in this country would be invigorated in their faith. I know I am. I'm not particularly young. I'm 39, but I feel invigorated. I mean, this is a shock.
And just to clarify, it is Pope Leo XIV. I think we may have given a wrong name officially.
Pope Leo, we said, Pope Leo.
This is just
Pope
happening
Leo
right now.
the
How
14th.
soon do we expect? I know he's out on the balcony now waving to the crowds. How soon do we actually start to hear from the Pope? How much will be work that has to happen internally before he is presented publicly in speaking roles, and how much of it is going to happen immediately?
Well, I think Mass is good to bank on Sunday at St. Peter's. I think that will be his first Mass. I think for the rest of the day today, things will be relatively quiet, probably a couple of small things, but a lot of this is internal. You know, this new Pope is not just big for Catholics. It's a big change for the church internally. So they have to work their bureaucracy, get things together, but I think within the next 48 hours, we might see a more visible new Pope. Mm-hmm. Cardinal Louis, you said Leo the 14th. You said Leo the 14th.
Yeah.
Then I would think Sunday Mass will be probably very well attended.
So once a cardinal becomes Pope, what kind of schooling does he have to go through quickly in the policies and behaviors of the Vatican, or do all the cardinals already know that part of it?
Well, I think Cardinal Prevost, given that he's been there a couple of years and he was in the prominent position of essentially appointing bishops, I think he has a pretty good idea of the inner workings. He was relatively close to Pope Francis, so even though he was made a cardinal a couple of years ago, I think he's got 2 years under his belt. But of course, being a cardinal or being part of the bureaucracy is a lot different than being the Pope, and it's a much different image. It's a much different front. You have to handle yourself differently. So that will be an adjustment. And that's no disrespect to Cardinal Prevost. This is something that every cardinal goes through when they become Pope. You know, you have to wave the right way. You got to look the right way and all this stuff.
Yeah. We talked so much about the secrecy of what happens in the conclave and how they go about. Now that it's done and the seal is broken and the Pope is chosen, will we get bits and pieces of understanding how the voting, or does all of that remain a mystery as well?
I think small things will get out. You know, it's the role of the media and the journalists to ask the tough questions, to dig up the information that is unseen and happening behind the walls. And I would imagine things will definitely get out, but I don't think any cardinal would necessarily come out and be extremely transparent with what went down. And I think also not just the media, but people, even like myself as a scholar, like we can kind of read between the lines as to what happened here. You know, we have an American Pope. Incredible to even say that. It was on the fourth day, so there was a good deal of consensus. We had someone who was relatively close to Francis. So, yeah, you kind of read between the lines. That's our job, not just as scholars, but also people involved in the media.
We're monitoring what's going on right now in Rome at the Vatican, and the Pope was just speaking. We couldn't hear it. I'm assuming he was probably giving a prayer or something ceremonial as opposed to a declaration of his reign. Would you assume that?
That's correct. Yeah, this is not a inaugural address that we might see on Capitol Hill with the election of the next president. The Pope Leo the 14th will not be explaining his agenda here. Right. It's usually simple words. You know, even Francis, when he came out in 2013, he said, you know, just pray for me. That he kept it very simple. Pope John Paul II came out, as I mentioned earlier, when he became Pope. He said, they had to go to the ends of the world to find me. And then he also said something quite humbling, too. He said, if I make a mistake, you'll correct me. So these are moments on the balcony of blessings that is really trying to make an emotional connection to the people. This is not the inaugural address that we might have with the election of a president.
And Craig, tell us how from the moment the decision is made to the moment that the new pope is on the balcony of blessings, how long is that? So, when did he receive the news that he has officially become the pope and now he's on the balcony speaking?
Well, it seemed like it's usually about 45 minutes to an hour once they have their pope. That they come out on the balcony of blessings. It seemed to be about that. I think we were about at the hour mark or 50 minutes. So the deal, they win the election. He has to accept the position. Mm-hmm. And when he accepts the position, he goes to, they call it the room of sorrows. It's kind of when you go into a room, you're by yourself and you put on the regalia, the pontificate regalia. And they call it the room of sorrows, not because it's a sad moment, but like it's your burden now. And there's so much that comes with this honor, but it's also a huge responsibility. And then this is also the time where they're deliberating on, or the cardinal would be deliberating on the name that he has chosen. And then they come out to the balcony and voila, it all happened quite quick.
Symbolically, during this period, they, if I'm not mistaken, they release their earthly being and now become the Pope for the people. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. He is on a different level. Talk about a responsibility. You're looking at half of the Christians in the world, 50% of all the Christians in the world are Catholics. It's represented in nearly every country in the world. It was beautiful to watch this as we were waiting for the Pope to come out to the balcony, just seeing all the flags and the great diversity that we see. It's really a global church, and I think our new Pope will very much carry on that legacy and that mission that we saw from Pope Francis.
An amazing moment, and I am thrilled that you were able to share it with us as it was happening. There will be a lot more news that will come out over the next few days about all of this, and the world changes in a moment today. Don't you agree, Craig?
It did, and it's shocking. And I don't think I'm going to even be able to process this because I'll be so busy talking to good folks like y'all in the media. So there's a lot to do, and I hope to come back with even more insight for you.
Once you've processed it, come on back and share it with us. Thank you.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Craig Considine is with Rice University. Thanks for joining us. Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll talk to Houston actor and Ransom Canyon star Brett Cullen. And we'll also tell you our current obsessions, and we want to hear yours by calling or texting at 713-440-8870. And we'll continue as this is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
It can be hard to stay informed about what's happening in our city, our state, and across the country. That's why Houston Public Media makes it easier.
Everything you hear on News 88.7 is powered by you, not advertisers. 80% of our funding comes from our Houston community.
That's what makes public media different. It's community funded and always here for you when you need it.
Join that community now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
I'm Scott Tong. Tennis writer Christopher Clary's new book tells the story of Rafa, the Spanish superstar Rafael Nadal, his tennis life, and how he motivated himself.
You told Rafa, you got this match in the bag. He will respond to you, arguing against your point. But if you ever tell him he doesn't have a chance, then the reaction is also a little bit defensive in a different way.
Nadal the Warrior, next time in Here and Now.
It's coming up today at 1 o'clock.
On the next Science Friday, why knobs and push buttons are making a comeback on your car's dashboard.
Buttons can seem kind of maddeningly simple. Anyone can push them. They're very sort of democratic. But on the other hand, I think there is a tremendous amount of complexity to buttons that we often don't think about.
Don't touch that dial. It's Science Friday from WNYC Studios.
You can hear it tomorrow. It starts at 1 p.m.
Houston Public Media, in partnership with Texas Southern University, brings to you The Vibe. R&B, hip-hop, and neo-soul. Music that resonates with all ages. The Vibe on 88.7 HD3 and on the Houston Public Media app.
Support comes from Mercury Chamber Orchestra, presenting a performance of Mendelssohn's Violin Concerto, performed alongside his Italian Symphony and more, all on period instruments. May 17th at the Wortham. More at mercuryhouston.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To share your thoughts on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Thank you, guys. We've been monitoring the new Pope.
There is a new Pope.
It's amazing.
Pope Leo
Developing news.
XIV from the U.S., from Chicago, actually.
Incredible.
I quickly had to look and see if he had any connection to Loyola, because I went to Loyola Chicago,
right.
And I thought,
You
do I know the
have
Pope?
some roots in Chicago, Ernie.
But it doesn't seem like our paths crossed. I didn't usually run with Cardinals very much. So, moving along in the moment, Brett Cullen is a distinguished actor whose career spans over 4 decades. He's a proud alumnus of Madison High School and the University of Houston, who he never forgets when you talk about his career. On screen, you know him in such roles as Thomas Wayne in Joker, Dan Fix on Falcon Crest, Governor Ray Sullivan in The West Wing, and most recently as Senator Sam Kirkland in Netflix Ransom Canyon. Please welcome a UH Distinguished Alumni Award winner and a friend of mine, Brett Cullen. Hello there, Brett.
Good morning, Ernie, and God bless Pope Leo XIII.
Amen.
So what do you think? Did you see that coming?
I was having coffee, waiting to come upstairs to do this interview, and all of a sudden the white smoke came out. I was on CNN, and then as soon as they announced it, I came up and came on because I figured I'm going to be late. But yeah, I'm very excited. It's very historic. It's a beautiful moment that we have the first American Pope. And 13 is my lucky number, so that was exciting.
Yay,
So,
and you were an altar boy, too, in your earlier
I was
days.
an altar boy for 5 years at Corpus Christi Catholic Church over on Stella Link.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
this has a distinct connection to you in the fact that Catholicism is your area of religion.
Well, it's how I was raised. I don't really attend Catholic church any longer. I do go to church. I consider myself more a Christian than I do affiliated with a particular religion.
Yeah.
But I love Pope Francis. I love what he stood for and how he spoke for the people. And I'm hoping Leo does the same.
It looks like it will be a continuation of that. But we're here to chat about you right now. So we're happy for the new Pope, but we're also happy for Brett joining us. I guess where I would start with, every time I think, Brett's had his career, he's done, you pop back up with something else. And now Ransom Canyon. You just won't stop, will you?
Well, actors don't retire. They just quit hiring you, and they keep hiring you. So.
A lot of people are in love with Ransom Canyon. And I was curious, you have worked in this business, as we said, 4 decades. You were on a very popular soap opera, a primetime soap, I should say, Falcon Crest, and now Ransom Canyon. I'm curious the difference in the approach to these continuing dramas as the technology has changed, the delivery has changed, the audience's attention span changes. What do you see different in the way we do these basically primetime dramas today?
Well, I think that the difference, if you're going to use the analogy of Falcon Crest versus this show, is, it's different sort of aspect of things. I mean, Falcon Crest was about California and the wine industry and the families revolving around that. And this is more about ranching in Texas and, a little bit of Friday Night Lights thrown in there with the kids and the football and all that stuff. So in terms of technology, it's massive. I mean, when we did Falcon Crest, we'd shoot 12, 13 pages a day. On this, you'd shoot 5, 6 pages a day. And there was more care given to it, because when I went on to Falcon Crest, I think it was the 5th or 6th season when I joined that cast. And this is a new show. So they're mean, it's beautifully shot. I mean, I don't know if you've seen it. It's beautiful locations, and it's, you know, I watched it with my wife, who said her quote was, "What I like about this is it's palatable. It doesn't upset her. You know,
Yeah.
it's romance, it's heartbreak, it's deviousness, but it's also got a beauty to it." So she loves the show. I really loved it. I wrote April last night, the creator, congratulating her, because we've been, as of yesterday, we were number 3 on Netflix, and 3 times since it's come out, we've been number 1. So a lot of people are seeing it, and it's very exciting. And we're hoping and praying for another season or 2.
Yeah. I'm assuming that when you play characters, you learn about the world they exist in. In West Wing, you probably learned more politics and things like that. Coming and playing a Texan in Texas, are you teaching them about it more so than you're learning from that?
Not necessarily that much, you know, I mean, that's kind of instinctive to me, just to be who I am, you know, being a Houston boy, and how influential my father's family, the Cullens, have been in the city and in Texas. And the difficulty for me is I'm sort of a liberal Democrat, and I'm always playing these Republicans. So I always kind of lean towards my dad when I'm doing something. It's like, oh, my dad would do that. Yeah, okay, I got you. The character is, I don't know where it's going, you know, in terms of, like, I talked to April, and I mean, she just said, "We've written some great stuff for you for season 2." And I'm like, okay, how bad am I going to be? It's like, to my son. What I mostly spoke to April and Joe about was really about the father-son relationship. I mean, no matter how contentious that relationship can be, there's still love. You know, I mean, my father and I were polar opposites, you know, politically and social issues. But we loved each other very much, and I miss my father. And even though I constantly would butt heads with him, and being the youngest of the family, I got away with it more than the other siblings.
Yeah.
But you know, I love my father very much, and even when we were screaming at each other about politics or whatnot, you know, there's love.
Yeah.
So that was my thing, is I always wanted to try and lean in that a little bit. But at some point, you know, when you're playing sort of a baddie or not such a nice person, there's the famous quote. I was working with Gene Hackman, God bless him. And I asked him, I said, "Gene, you played a lot of bad guys. It was that movie, The Replacements, I did." And I said, you know, Martell, the character I'm playing, is not, you know, particularly nice guy and an egotist. And I said, how do you try and find the gray area? And he looked at me and he said, "Why? Just be bad. It's fun."
Now, Ransom Canyon is not shot in Texas, but in New Mexico. How does that work out for you when you're trying to get into character as a Texan? You're in New Mexico.
Yeah, I put a hat on, it all works. You know,
I got it.
But no, it is. I mean, I laugh. I was with my wife. There was one shot with someone on a kind of a cliff, beautiful tableau on a horse, and I went, well, either that's Big Bend or that's not Texas. But you know, it doesn't matter. It's a TV show, and it's part of it's a fantasy. You know, so who cares? I mean, it's like the movie Long Game I did with Quaid that we supposed to be in Del Rio, Texas, and we shot it in Bogota, Colombia. And at one point I turned to the director and I went, you know, I feel like I'm doing Lost right now. I mean, these mountains and there's clouds hanging over us. And I said, "You've been to Del Rio?" And he's like, yeah, I know. I said, "It's just flat and dusty." And I went, "Okay." He goes, "But we're on a golf course, so they won't know the difference." So I went, "All right, whatever."
Well, speaking of Dennis Quaid, you were just recently, and with him and Cindy Pickett and Robert Wool, and this week is Teacher Appreciation, and you were remembering somebody that impacted you from the University of Houston.
Yes, Cecil Pickett, who I always referred to as my second father, my artistic father. I miss him too. But funnily enough, he wrote a script about his childhood that Cindy now has taken and broken into it. It was a film and broken into a limited 8 episode miniseries or series that we're trying to sell right now.
Oh.
So, and I'd go along on that as a producer. So
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, Cecil Pickett had an enormous impact on me. I mean, basically, I've had two geniuses I worked with. One was him, and the other was Kim Stanley. And Kim Stanley did a documentary that just aired or was premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. And it's the both of them. Cecil taught me one thing, which was to work Stanislavski, to work from the outside in with a little bit of Uta Hagen thrown in. And Kim made me work from the inside out. And so the combination of that has, I think, provided me with the option and the opportunity to grow and continue to grow as an actor, which is why I think I keep getting hired, because I've never thought I knew anything. I always think I'm trying to learn something.
Well, one thing you have done, and it's your connection back to U of H, is you continue to give back to the university. And you give back in lots of ways. One that is the most amazing is you bring your celeb friends, your showbiz friends back to the university to work with the students to help them develop their crafts. We've had some of them on the show as you've brought them into town. And I guess the question is your commitment to this organization.
Well, Houston, the University of Houston gave me everything. You know, if it hadn't, I would have been just an unemployed surfer, probably working in a restaurant, waiting tables and knocking people over with my tray, because that's not my world. But I was just a surf bum and a baseball player, and I wasn't very good in school, and I discovered theater. And my brother convinced me to go into the theater department, and which I did. And as long as I had the option of changing majors, if I didn't like it, and I fell in love with it the first year. And Cecil became Mr. Pickett became my mentor. Yeah. So that's, and the other side of the University of Houston that I'm proud of is, you know, if you know the history of the university, that my father's family, Hugh Roy Cullen, his uncle, built the university. Mm-hmm. And they have a huge influence there. And I think that's the only reason why they let me in. I think I had a C- after high school because my last name was Cullen, but it gave me something, and so I feel an obligation to give back. There's a funny thing. I made Robert Wool come there once when we were getting the distinguished. Him and I and Dennis all got the Distinguished Alumni Award the same night. Yep. And I told Robert to change his flight and go teach his class. And I said, Robert, you can afford it, just change the ticket, and he did. And after we were there, Robert, if you've ever talked to him, doesn't stop talking. You know, he can suck the air out of a room if you let him. And I'm sitting with him, and we were over off Katy Freeway at this hotel, and I'm smoking a cigar on the roof, and he leans over and looks at me, and I'm like, he's not talking. What's going on? And he finally looked at me and goes, I'm mad at you. And I said, why are you mad at me? And he goes, because you made me teach that class. And I said, why would you be mad at me? The money? And he goes, no, you made me care again. This used to be a memory.
Wow. That's
So
beautiful.
that's why
I
do it.
Is there a lot of promise? Is there a lot of promise in the students we have here for this career, do you think?
Well, I do believe so. I think that they're Sharon Ott, the new head of the theater department, who is brilliant. She's won a Tony. She ran Berkeley Rep. She's embraced, as I have, and have been trying to push the school to embrace more as the aspect of film and television that if an actor wants to work and make money and have a living, I mean, theater is the most important thing. It came before anything, but it doesn't pay as much as you're working on a TV show or shooting a movie and or doing guest shots or whatnot. I mean, a guest shot, the minimum they pay these days is like $8,000 something. You know, you do a play and you're lucky to make that. I don't know the rates even for Lord theaters when you're working in rep theaters and stuff, but it's not a lot. So I feel like they're moving in the right direction. I have friends of mine teaching there. You've got Victoria Burrows, who cast all the Lord of the Rings movies and is Zemeckis' casting director. She lives in Houston now because of the thing that you can work anywhere. She lives in Houston, so she teaches once a year there for a couple of weeks. And then Richard and Elizabeth, her friends who are British, teach self-taping and voiceover. And they come twice a year. And I told all the students, I said, this is the most important class you'll ever take. If you're going to move into any other world besides theater, you have to have this talent or this ability to be able to do that, because that's how you're going to get jobs, because you don't go in a room anymore, very rarely. I mean, I just got cast in a film. I'm going to start at the end of May, shooting in May and July with Nate Bargatze. Do you know who that is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Comedian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm playing his dad, and it's a really funny movie, and it's a Sony film. And but I self-taped. My wife shot me on this iPad, sent it in, and boom, they called up. My manager said, "Yeah, you got the job." So
yeah, but they can probably look you up and know who you are. It's not a hard one.
I know.
In a little bit, we're going to go in on our show into current obsessions. And I know our producer here, one of his current obsessions, he hasn't stopped talking about it since we said you were going to be on the show, was your very first film called Stewardess School.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So for Jim, please share a story.
Well, I'll tell you this. I want to ask him, how old was he when he saw
it? He's 12 years old. 12 years old.
12 years old.
Well, I know why he liked it at 12. I was talking to Robert Wool yesterday, as a matter. He said, it's so weird. People like things. And I said, I had some Teamsters come up to me one day on a set going, man, we saw the greatest movie last night, Stewardess School. You were such a great film. And I looked at them and went, what is wrong with you?
That's how we look at Jim all the time, too, and wonder that.
Yeah.
Brett, thank you.
Well, no, it's a fun film, but, there's a lot of girls with no tops on and,
Yep.
Me and Donnie Most and Bryn Bohr. the cast was hysterical, but still, it's like, it was supposed to replace, what was it, the cop franchise, the bad cops and the comedy. What was the name of it? Anyway, but the head of the studio took one look at it and just said, not on my dime.
Well, Brett, thank you for moving on beyond Stewardess School and giving us so much good work.
Yes.
Ransom Canyon still out there. Congratulations. Hoping for a second season. Fingers crossed. And Brett, thank you for always being available.
All right, Ernie, take care. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it, man.
Thank
you. Have a good Pope Leo Day.
Yes. We just heard Brett Cullen's current obsession. Coming up on Hello Houston, we want to hear your current obsessions. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Hi, I'm Craig Cohen, the host of Houston Matters. Join me weekday mornings at 9 or at your leisure on your podcast feed for your daily guide to the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston. From politics to the economy, energy to the environment, healthcare to education to transportation and beyond. If it matters to Houston, it matters to us. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts or live on the air weekdays at 9 a.m. right here on News 88.7.
I'm Jeremy Hobson. Next time on The Middle, it's been 35 years since President George H.W. Bush signed the Americans with Disabilities Act into law.
America welcomes into the mainstream of life all of our fellow citizens with disabilities.
That law prohibited discrimination and required reasonable accommodations in public buildings and transportation. But today, with over 70 million Americans living with a disability, what improvements still need to be made? That's next time on The Middle.
You can hear it tonight. It's on at 8 p.m.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from St. Arnold Brewing Company, a place for corporate events on tap, meeting rooms, AV equipment, and full catering available. More at starnold.com. Houston Public Media presents the Moth Story Slam, May 13th at River Oaks Theater. Doors open at 7 p.m. The theme of the night is Only in Houston. Stories about what makes Houston special. Tickets at houstonpublicmedia.org/themoth. Support comes from Health Link Advisors, helping hospitals safeguard patient care and operations against cyber attacks with documented continuity solutions. Details at healthlinkadvisors.com. Support comes from Asia Society Texas, announcing 31 ways to celebrate Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, featuring Vicki Wynn, sharing her journey from boat baby to NBC News. More at asiasociety.org/Texas.
And now back to Hello Houston. To share your thoughts on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
And we have made it to one of our favorite segments, which is Current Obsessions. We're going to chit-chat a little bit before it, but I wanted to let all of you know, if you've got a current obsession you want to share with us, the important thing is get it in early. So call us right now, 713-440-8870. You can also text it to us, 713-440-8870, or email talk@hellohouston.org. And we're going to call through all of them. We're getting to our current obsessions in a minute. But I just want to say it's been a very fascinating show, I think, today.
Yes.
I always love talking to Brett Cullen. He's a lot of fun, a lot of history, a lot of stories to tell, but also to be on when something so historic is happening on our globe, on our planet, is the choosing of a new pope, and to be able to be there with you as we've learned the news. And even though a couple times we've gotten his papal name a little backwards, I've done it, but we're there. It is Leo XIII.
Pope Leo XIV.
The 14th. Brett took us to 13.
Leo the 14th, to clarify.
Yes. So we have our new pope, and it's kind of amazing. From Chicago, from the U.S., the first time a U.S. cardinal has become pope.
And again, we want to invite you to the conversation, 713-440-8870. And we have Jane on the line from Fort Bend with a current obsession.
Jane, we're waiting to hear this. What is it?
Hello, Houston. My current obsession, my real obsession is gardening. All the gardeners out there, scream.
Yay.
And it
Even
looks
in hot
like
Houston.
it looks like you got some good weather for the weekend to do some it's going to rain a little tonight, I think Fred said. Fred? Who's Fred? Frank said.
Jane, I have to tell you, I just recently volunteered to be the gardens chair at my daughter's elementary school for next year. So
Great.
I don't have a green thumb, but this is something I'm taking on, and I'm very excited.
Oh, super, super. Well, we can get you some seedlings.
Yes.
It's great. I'd be happy to do that. We were just trying to green up Houston. In fact, we've got a huge project in September, the greening up Third Ward. We'll reach out to you guys and tell you more about it. But, yeah, get out there and dig in the dirt with kids. It's really good for them.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Jane.
A great current obsession. If you have one you want to share with us, 713-440-8870. I think you and I currently share the new current obsession.
Yes.
You're looking at me like, what are you going to
What is it?
The Pope.
Yes,
The new
absolutely.
Pope,
That's
we're
what I thought you were
definitely
going
Pope.
with. But
That's where I was. But then
just-
when you looked at me,
I just never know, Ernie. I just never know.
Yeah, because I'm going to go another way with my other obsession. But yeah, the Pope thing, I think, is going to take up more amount of time than I ever imagined it would, because now I want to know everything about this guy. you
Yes,
know?
absolutely.
I want to know where he came from, what he did, what his impact was in Chicago. I was in school in Chicago. I went to a Jesuit university. I'm fascinated by that aspect of it. The United States impact on the Vatican. What's it going to be? How is it going to change and shift? What kind of, how liberal or conservative was he in his time in the U.S.? Is he carrying that through? Is he more, as we've heard, probably in line with France? So much together.
Yeah, and maybe you'll even convert to Catholicism, Ernie.
Probably
I mean, I
not.
feel like you know a lot about it and you're very passionate about it.
Orthodox and Catholics are very close.
Yeah, very
and we
parallel.
were the same church for the first 1,000 years. In church time, that's just a moment. But in
A
our
blink
life,
and a
blink.
eye.
So the first 1,000 years, we were the same church, and then we split.
And we do have another text obsession. Colby from Katy says, I'm gardening and currently obsessed with keeping pests out of my garden. Y'all
I
are
want
going to have
keep
to give me
pests out of
tips.
everything. How are you doing it, Colby?
This is fascinating.
Are you
And it's
using
about
natural remedies? Are you using chemicals? Is it what you plant? Tell me. I want to know more.
It's about to get really hot. So that's what's going to be very interesting about gardening, right? Is we're going to be outside and doing this. But I'm for this gardening obsession,
Gardening
y'all. Keep it
obsession.
up.
My obsession, I'm going to tell you again, it's Eurovision. I've only got one more week to talk about it because next weekend is Eurovision. And then I have to be quiet for about 10 months about Eurovision again.
And on
so.
Tuesday, we'll have a
We
segment
have
about Eurovision.
William Lee Adams, who is the #1 blogger in the world about Eurovision. So if you're wondering what in the world I've been talking about, William will kind of explain it. And then next Saturday, if you really want to experience it, look on our social media, the Montrose Country Club. It's a restaurant.
right.
We're going to do a screening party so you can come and see Eurovision.
And also this weekend is Mother's Day, so everybody's going to be out and about.
Are you
I will
obsessed with Mother's
I'm
Day?
obsessed with heading down down to South Texas. I will be performing with the Rio Grande Valley Chorus and reading poetry.
I knew nothing of this.
With a symphony there in honor of breast cancer and women, and my mother's a breast cancer survivor, so I will be down in South Texas on Saturday.
What are you going to read?
I will be reading poetry from different poets of all different facets that breast cancer affects. So researchers wrote in, people that were affected by it. It is absolutely fascinating. Turtle Creek Chorus originally did it in Dallas, and now the Rio Grande Valley is going to be doing it.
Well, that's great. And we're so lucky to have you there sharing your talents with them.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't get all of your obsessions, but remember, you can send them anytime to us, and we'll gather them throughout the week and share them on Thursdays.
And that's a wrap with our current obsessions. Thank you for sending in yours. And again, you can send them all week. Just put current obsessions and send us an email, talk@hellohouston.org. And again, thanks for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with more conversations. This is News 88.7.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Donations come in many forms: a monthly membership, a one-time gift,